The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. So thrilled to be here with you on this Tuesday morning in the middle of January 2015. We've got a big exciting show planned for you today. We're going to get to a lot of different things that I think are going to be of great interest to you. So, but first I want to remind you that this entire show is meant to be completely interactive. We want you to participate with us. We want to hear your thoughts, your concerns, your feelings, your questions. So lots of different ways that you can engage with us. And I've recently taken to saying we're all about educating and empowering here. So what do you want to know more about and how do you want to be empowered, right? Let's ask questions about that. Kelby's going to show you some of the different ways that you can interact with us here, some of the different ways you can be watching the show, some of the different ways that you can be asking questions. But I want to remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. When you go, there's so many things to do. Please check out our blog. It's a great blog. And, you know, this week there is a blog that I would love your opinion about. It's something that we're going to be talking about a lot this week. But also there's a place for you to sign up for our free it's our email list, and if you do that, what happens is you get a newsletter once a month that tells you kind of what's going on this month, preps you for some of the things, gives you some link to some cool things, and then you'll also get a weekly reminder of who's going to be on the show. You get to know before anybody else what's happening, and it will also key you into some other things that are happening behind the scenes, and we're working on getting you some coupons for some things that might be helpful and useful to you. You know I'm all about that. I want to be helpful and useful to you. It's one of my purposes in life, besides the fact that I'm a parent with a child on the autism spectrum, which we'll get to in a second. But also on that homepage, you'll notice that there's a live feature there. When you go to the page, it looks like a desktop, right? And there's a computer sitting on the desktop, and if you click on the triangle that's on the computer, you can be watching the most recently recorded live show, the live show, or any one of the other shows that we've done, because there's a playlist up in the little corner. It looks like a little notepad. Click on it, and you can cycle through and go, oh, I want to watch when they had this person on. We encourage you to watch. It's all free. You can pick and choose what you would like. You can also be watching all those episodes on our YouTube channel. You can be downloading them from iTunes. You can to you in a free format. All right, now to the side of the screen there are a bunch of white boxes, and you can put your cursor in the one that says your question, start typing, hit enter, and it will show up here on my screen. There is a little bit of a lag, so ask your question early in a segment. It's one thing I ask of you, and also know that you're completely anonymous, and we love that you have the ability to be completely anonymous. We have no idea who you are, where you are, or anything else, right? But if you want us to give the most informed response, then it's helpful to tell us where in the world you are, because unfortunately autism isn't the same in New York as it is in California. There are different resources that are available. So we like to have a sense of where you are so that we can help you to connect you with the things that will empower you. How's that? You don't have to tell us your street address. I'm not interested in knowing that. I've got no purpose for knowing that. Not for these kinds of things, but we do want to know, like, what's the major city that's close by? And many of you are watching around the world, and I failed geography. I continue to fail geography. So give us a sense of where you are, and that'll help us us to know where to start with giving you resources, all right? And there are resources for all of you. They're just different. And we continue to grow those resources, all of us together, right? Si se puede. You know, that's what I always say. Anyway, so we hope that you will get what you need from this show. Step up, take your place at the table, say, this is what I need. Okay, we always like to remind you at the start of the show, too, that while we'll have many experts on the show, I won't be one of them. I'm like, you know, the switchboard operator here. I'm trying to plug things into the different plugs. And I am a parent of a child who's on the autism spectrum. He was diagnosed at 2.5, and he's 11.5 now. So I feel like at times I learned things from mistakes that I made and things that we, you know, just happenstance that we did right. But the truth is that the secret of the success that we've enjoyed, and good heavens, we've enjoyed some great success. But that has been because we got good information at the right time. And then, to be honest, we acted on it. That's a big part of it. We're going to be talking about that this week. We acted on the advice that we had, and when something wasn't working, we gave it a chance, and then we would say, how are we going to tweak this, right? We didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We took action. I'm trying to apply that to all the other areas of my life because it worked so well. But in any case, my life is rich and full, and I have this wonderful 11-year-old who's doing so well. And I know it's because we took that action and because we got advice and resources at the right time. And I want to be able to do that for you. But do not be fooled. I do not know your answers. I do not know your child. I do not know you. I have great empathy, and I want to know you, and I want to know more about your children. I want to help you to find what's right for you. Not what worked for me, but what's right for you. I get very emotional about it. I have a lot to pay forward. But all of our kids are different. All of us are different. All of our lives are different, and our resources, because it's not an equal playing field, are different. Having said that, though, come, be with us. Take what you need, ask for what you need, and let's see if we can hook you up with something that gives you the hope to get to the progress. That's what it's all about, progress. It's going to be different for each one of our kids, but the progress is the thing, the bottom line. Okay. So, having said all of that, we like to start every morning with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. The jargon du jour is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to make sense of it in our world so that we know how can we use this term to get to the progress. Okay, our jargon term for today is ASD. I love that sometimes we traipse into alphabet land, especially when we're talking at schools. But this is something that's really important that we understand in its full sense. So what is ASD? Our actual definition, ASD is autism spectrum disorder. This, in the past, has included a diagnosis of PDD-NOS, autistic disorder, or Asperger's syndrome. All of these things now have come under the same umbrella. We really, technically, at this point in the game, there are still many people who identify themselves as being Aspies or having Asperger's syndrome. But the truth is that in the new DSM-5, that designation no longer exists. We now are referring to everyone as having autism spectrum disorder, and that aspect of it is very important. Moving on to our working definition, again, under the same umbrella, autism, PDD-NOS, or Asperger's syndrome. The criteria has changed, and many of you have been writing in and saying we're being asked to go get a diagnosis, a confirmation diagnosis under the new diagnosis. If you have more interest about that, during last week's Ask Dr. Doreen addressed those concerns and let our viewers know why that's happening and why you shouldn't be terrified of that happening. That in reality, that's a good thing, going and checking from time to time and seeing where you are or where your child is ideally what you would do to get to that progress. You can bring up a lot of emotion about, is my child still going to qualify for a diagnosis? Here's the thing about that. It's a very dicey thing because it's a quality problem, right? We do know that some individuals will progress to the point that they no longer qualify for a diagnosis. Do take the opportunity to watch what Dr. Doreen said about that, because there is room on the new in the new criteria for our kids who are doing well but still have a disorder, that they still need help and still need support and still need those services. So don't be afraid to go in and get checked from time to time for a diagnosis. We have a whole series of shows that we did with Dr. Gramsci also to explain the DSM-5 criteria, and I would point you to that if you're curious about what it now takes to get a diagnosis. All right, having said all of that, it is so important that we acknowledge that when we're talking about ASD, we're talking about a disorder, that it is a significant enough issue, a significant enough set of challenges that the individual is facing, that it's preventing them from being able to do things that are independent or things that are pursuit of happiness, things that they want to do. If somebody says, for instance, I'm not interested in having friends, I don't want to make friends, it's not causing me any difficulty to not have friends, I'm not interested in having a social life, I love my job, I'm able to do my job, I'm able to take care of myself, and I'm not interested in being a social animal, that's not a disorder. There's nothing disorder about that. That's a choice that somebody's making. They're saying, I don't want to do that, and the rest of my life is functioning just fine. So when we talk about a disorder, we're talking about something that prevents people from being able to do the things that they want to do. Now, let's case in point, my son, who has difficulty sometimes making friends, right? That's difficult for him. He needs help, he needs support to be able to do that, but he wants them. He wants them in the worst way, and it's upsetting to him when he can't connect with somebody to make that connection to make a friend. And in his life, that is a deficit for him, and he has enough of those things that he still qualifies as having a disorder. People can improve to the point where they don't qualify for having the disorder, but they may still have some aspects of an autism diagnosis, but it's not at the level of a disorder. Hopefully that will set you up for success in some of the things that we're going to be talking about this week. But ASD stands for Autism Spectrum Disorder. Okay, moving on, we always have a question of the week or a question of the day, excuse me, that we like to ask you guys, and I hope we'll have time later on today. A lot of times lately we haven't had time to fit that in, but I hope we're gonna have time to talk about this. Do you believe that it is possible to recover from the elements of autism that qualify as a disorder? Recovery is a term that gets mentioned and batted around a lot in the autism community. It brings up a lot of emotion. People get very upset about it. But I want to know from you, do you believe that it's possible that the elements of autism that are disabling, that qualify somebody for disorder, do you personally believe that somebody can improve, not all of our kids, but any of our kids can improve to the point where they no longer qualify as having a disorder? I, of course, have already said, I firmly believe that. I've seen that. I've seen that on a regular basis. I know it to be true, but it doesn't matter if I know it to be true if you don't believe it to be true. So I'm taking a poll. Who believes, who does not believe, and you can write your emotions, and you can, as they say, vomit on the page, go on our Facebook page, and you can yell at me and say, why are you saying that? It presents the wrong idea. Let's have that out. Let's have that conversation. I want to have that conversation this week. Because I have no problem with talking about why we talk about it. I think it's important to talk about it, and I think it's important for you to have all your feelings about it and to share them. Let's get it out, right? All right, so we always have a topic of the week, and our topic this week is fighting for what you believe in. Whew, and I set these topics well in advance, and I never know what's going to be happening in that sort of week, but this really hits home for me today on so many different levels. But I'm going to be talking a little bit later on about a conversation that I had with somebody earlier today, in which sometimes it's so interesting. You talk to somebody and you have to turn the mirror around at yourself and go, oh my gosh, I'm doing the same thing. The learning process is never over. But we're going to talk this week about what do you believe in, what are you willing to fight for, what's important to you, and how much are you willing to fight for it. I said to somebody the other day, I said, gosh, I feel like so many things are wrong right now with so many different things that, my grandmother always used to say, we're going to take to the streets, we're going to walk, we're going to, because she came from the era of, Selma, where, we're going to walk to protest peacefully, and we're going to do that, and we're going to show the world. And I said to somebody the other day, I said, there are so many things to walk over, I don't know where to start. we would be walking a lot. But you have to kind of sort through that. We've been talking about setting priorities. So setting the priorities of what do you believe in and fighting for the things that you believe in. How do we do that? How do we find the space to be happy and not fight all the time? What a concept, right? I don't know that I have a lot to share except that I need to learn that lesson. Maybe you guys can help me to do that. Okay, so we're going to talk about that this week and some of the different things that we have going on here this morning. Very excited for the first time, Dr. Cynthia Norrell. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. She's the author of Quirky Yes, Hopeless No. Don't we like that? She's going to be with us in just a few minutes, joining us via Skype. We have some autism news to update you with. And later in the show, in the next hour, Dr. Linda Copeland is going to be with us. So important that you guys know that Dr. Copeland is both a board-certified behavior analyst, which we have a lot of those on the show, but she's also a developmental pediatrician. And from time to time, we're lucky enough to get a developmental pediatrician to be here on the show. But the truth of the matter is that according to records that I guess would know, there are only 2 in the entire world people who are board-certified behavior analysts and pediatricians, and I don't know that the other one is a developmental pediatrician. So we like to refer to Dr. Linda Copeland as kind of a unicorn. She's she's a rarity you see very infrequently, and I love it because she's able to put things in a context for us that she understands what we're going through behaviorally with kids with autism. She understands what an intervention that involves ABA is going to look like and how that kind of works in and around and for your family, but some of the difficulties that you're facing with it. And then she has the other component of it, that she's a developmental pediatrician, so that you can go to her and ask her questions that you'd love to ask a pediatrician, but you'd love to ask a pediatrician who gets what you're doing. She's here with us every 3rd Tuesday of the month, and today's that day, so we've got it lined up for her to answer some questions that you guys have sent in. So you're not going to want to miss that. That's at 11:15 Pacific time in our next hour. So all of that and ever so much more, and hopefully an opportunity to hear what you guys have to say about, do you believe in the concept of recovering from the disabling aspects of autism? All right, stick with us. We're going to be right back after these messages.
Hi, I'm Ryan with Autism Research Group. We study ways to improve the lives of kids with autism. One of those ways is teaching safety skills, such as what to do if they get lost. We hit the streets to find out if anybody knows the correct answer on how to teach a kid what to do if they get lost. You're teaching a child
what to do if they get lost.
Yeah, you're trying to make them independent so they have the skills.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, give them a compass. Code name's good idea. Centurion.
We always have this whistle.
Oh, I'd also tell the kid, don't get scared. You're gonna be all right, man. This is just the world. This is planet Earth. You're at home here. As long as you're on planet Earth, you're at home.
As long as you're on planet Earth, you're home. This guy's a genius. With that flawless logic, he just solved our homeless problem. And as for the unique sounding whistle, although very cool, it'll probably only work if you're in close proximity. And a compass?
I have her call me.
Yeah, she doesn't have a phone. Parents are like, you're too young, you don't need a phone.
Establish some sort of meeting place.
What if they can't find a meeting place? Because sometimes the kids get nervous when they get lost.
Yeah.
So like a backup plan,
Well,
plan B.
yeah, I don't know. No, not really.
Let them go and find a new kid. Or something.
Yeah, I've got a different one. Yeah.
There's not much you can do.
There is stuff you can do.
Right?
That's right, there is stuff you can do. In 2012, myself, along with my colleagues, Dr. Jonathan Tarbox and Dr. Adele Nadowski, published a study in the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis on teaching kids what to do when they get lost. The study demonstrated how 3 simple things, rules, role-playing, and praise, were effective in establishing these help-seeking behaviors. The benefit of this method is it doesn't require the child to have a cell phone or to have to locate a meeting place, which might be difficult if they're in a place like Disneyland. So once again, our method included rules, role-playing, and praise. Let's head back outside and learn about some of these rules.
They should yell out loud. Can't find my mom, help me.
Maybe yell out and scream for help.
All right, scream really loud.
Correct.
And if that doesn't work, then,
I don't know.
well, they could seek help from someone.
Find an adult.
Yeah, go to a vendor, and say I'm lost.
Find an adult, like a police officer or a fireman or an employee in the store. and tell them, and maybe they can help you contact your parent. It really is that simple. You don't need to get your kid a cell phone. You don't need to establish a meeting place that they might not be able to find when they're lost and panicking. And you definitely don't need to give them a compass. All your kid has to do is 3 things. First, yell mom or dad real loud. 2, if that doesn't work, find an employee. And then 3rd, tell the employee they're lost. If they can't locate an employee, then tell them to find a mother with children, because that's probably the safest person to approach. I'm not saying that most men are predators, but most predators are men. That is a fact. I've read it in a fortune cookie. All right, so you've gone over the rules with your kid, and you've quizzed them, and they're able to tell you the correct responses so they understand the rules. But is that enough? How do you know they're gonna perform correctly in a real world setting? You need to get out there and find out if they can actually do it. So you'd go over the rules and tell them, like, do this, do that, but how would you know if they actually knew what to do? If you wanted to shoot a basketball, and I just told you, oh, when you shoot a basketball, do this, this, and this.
I never practiced.
You never practiced, yeah, so it don't matter how many times we go over the rules or how well you can repeat them back to me. It's not going to change until you get on the court and practice.
Maybe do like a, a little skit with them.
Like a role play?
Role play, yeah.
Your child, you're lost in the toy aisle.
Okay.
What do you do? I'm an attendant, walking around.
I'm lost, I don't know where my mom is.
And then once you practice, you just like praise them, give them feedback, like, good job, you did it.
Reinforcing it.
Yes, this woman wins the prize for best comment. She pointed out the most important part of learning, reinforcement. Now, in our study, we used praise, but for your kid, you might have to use something else. You might have to buy them a treat, a toy, take them to their favorite restaurant where they can eat unhealthy food, and run around and climb through plastic tunnels that have the unmistakable scent of urine, and then play games spending $20 to get a plastic little spider ring that they will eventually lose in a ball pit. The point is, you need to reward your child for correctly demonstrating what you've been teaching them.
Okay, I'm gonna call her. Hello, your child, Ryan Autism is missing. There you go.
Woohoo!
Yay!
So you tested it out
I'll
in the
try.
store to make sure I knew it. I had the rules,
Yes.
we role played it, and you made sure I knew it, and then like you said, good job, and all that. Now we're good to go.
We're good to go.
All right.
Done?
High five right there.
Yeah.
So there you have it. Give your child the rules, get out there and practice, and reward your child for responding correctly. For more information, please visit us online at autismresearchgroup.org. I'm Ryan Bergstrom. Thanks for watching. Yes, ding, no. Yes, this woman wins the first, yes, this woman, yes, this woman wins the best. Yes, this woman wins the first place. Yes, this woman wins. Why can't I say woman? Yes, this woman wins. What's the line? Yes!
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm so excited because right now joining us via Skype is Dr. Cynthia Norral. And we're excited to have her for the first time on the show. She is a licensed educational psychologist. She's a nationally certified cognitive behavior therapist, and she's a board certified behavior analyst. I've never heard of somebody being all 3 of those things, Dr. Norral, so we're thrilled to welcome you to the show.
Thank you, Shannon. I'm glad to be here.
Well, and we should also mention that you are the clinical director of CASE. Now tell us what CASE stands for and what CASE is.
CASE stands for Comprehensive Autism Services and Education, and I am a non-public agency as well as a private agency providing ABA and services to young children all the way to young adults with autism spectrum disorders.
And where is that? Where is CASE located?
Our main office is in Carlsbad, California, which is in San Diego County, and then we have an office in Aiea, Hawaii, which is on the island of Oahu. So we have 2 offices at this time.
Well, and I imagine, you know, it's very clever what you've created because we have a lot of people who write into us on a regular basis, and I think more and more people are getting educated about the fact that they want to have a BCBA working on their child's case, designing an ABA program that's really effective, good quality ABA. But a lot of times we get into an area where we start talking about anxieties and things like that, and we frequently will recommend that somebody talk to a cognitive behavioral therapist, and what plus that can be when working on those kinds of things with an individual. But then there's always that other component about making it work with the school and having an understanding of how to make all of those things work along with an educational program. And it sounds like you've got the full package.
We do, and that's why when I started the agency 15 years ago, I did call it comprehensive, because we do work with all sides. So it is a plus.
It is an amazing
At times a little frustrating, because you just want to go in and say, okay, do you all just kind of get it? But
and we know that they don't. That's why we need people like you. So tell us, if somebody is interested in getting any of these services from you, what's the best way for them to start services? What's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Well, the best way for them to get in contact is to contact my office and speak with my assistant. I do need to do intakes on any of the clients coming in, so we would start with an intake appointment. And then at the same time, we could look into insurance. I'm in network with many of the insurances, including Aetna, Anthem, Blue Shield, TRICARE. I'm an ECHO provider for the military families. So we would start there and look at what their funding model would be. If they're coming from the regional center, then they need to start with their service coordinator to get the referral over to working with us. And then with school districts, we aren't seeing as many kids via school districts right now. I do work with High Tech High, which is a charter school that's here in San Diego County. But outside of that, we don't have a lot of work that we're doing specifically with the school districts. But if a family has a question, wants to know more about the IEP or whatever, I can absolutely support them as an educational consultant in that process.
Okay, and this might be a weird question, but if somebody already has their ABA provider and that's working for them really well, but they want to work with you specifically for the cognitive behavioral therapy, is that something that you're amenable to?
Yes, absolutely. And the other thing is that for the Friends Club, our groups that we're going to talk about in a little bit, that can be separate from their ABA provider as well.
Awesome. So you have a website that we can refer them to?
Our CASE website is casefamily.com. So it's just CASE family.com. And I have a couple other websites as well. There's drcynthianoral.com.
Okay.
And as we go on, we can talk about some of the different websites that they all kind of feed into.
Okay, because there's many different things that we want to talk to you about, because you are author of an amazing book that we're going to take a break and come back and talk about that. But to let people know, it's called Quirky Yes, Hopeless No. What a great title. What a great title. There it is. And you also have a foundation that we're going to talk about a little bit further and into the interview. And you mentioned the Friends Club that we're going to talk about more extensively. But first, we're going to take a break. So stick with us more with Dr. Cynthia Norral after these messages.
Hi guys, welcome back to Smarty. This month, we're going to be creating recycled crayons to help us make some scratch art. While we work on this awesome activity, you'll notice that these icons will pop up. These icons tell you important information about the skills we're using and where to find them on the Skills program. Skills is an ABA-based online tool that helps parents create curriculum for the children that are on the autism spectrum. And if you're already a Skills user, you're going to get the most out of this fun activity. Well, let's get started. The materials you'll be needing are old crayons, muffin tins, white cardstock, painter's tape, paintbrush, black tempera paint, laundry detergent, shallow bowls, and some barbecue skewers. Inevitably, anytime my niece comes over and we draw, we end up with a bunch of broken crayons. No problem. I'm going to take these broken crayons today and we're going to peel off the paper. Once they're peeled, you're going to place them in a muffin tin or some small container, and you're going to have the oven preheat to 150. You're going to put the crayons in there and they're going to melt for about 15 to 20 minutes. As you wait for your recycled crayon to cool, now it's time to prep your cardstock. You're gonna take your painter's tape and you're gonna line the 4 sides with it. Now that my recycled crayon has cooled, I'm gonna have my child fill in the cardstock, leaving no corner left unfilled with the crayon. I'm gonna take my black tempera paint and put it in a small bowl with a little bit of laundry detergent. I'm gonna mix that together. Then you're gonna have your child paint over their crayon drawing. You wanna make sure it's completely covered in paint. Let it dry and do a few more coats if necessary, if you can still see the crayon underneath. I've been really patient and now the paint is finally dry. I'm gonna take my bamboo skewer and draw a picture on here. You're gonna use your bamboo skewer to scratch away the black paint to reveal the colorful crayons that we used underneath. This is a time for your child to get as imaginative as they'd like. Here's my completed picture. I hope you had fun creating one on your own with your kids. Well, until next time guys, craft on. Bye. To find more about Skills and to access all of the lessons you saw in today's Smarty, visit skillsforautism.com and click on the parents icon. Skills, the online autism solution.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Our very special guest right now is Dr. Cynthia Norral, and she is the author of the book Quirky Yes, Hopeless No. The subtitle is Practical Tips to Help Your Child with Asperger's Syndrome to Be More Socially Accepted. So Dr. Norral, so thrilled that you're here with us, and you've got the book there. Hold it up again for us one more time so that people can see it at home. There it is, so they can recognize and find it in their bookstore. So talk to us a little bit about what inspired you to write this book.
Well, what I wanted to do is I worked alongside of a mother of one of my clients at the time who had Asperger's, and she herself was an author, and I wanted to write a book that was a bit more, I wanted to be really parent-friendly and user-friendly, so I didn't want like long chapters or a long book that you had to sit and read the whole book to get what you need to get out of it. And so the way that we put it together, there's 85 lessons. So for example, if you're dealing with going to birthday parties, and that's such a struggle for you with your child, then you go to that chapter and you read, and it's got some really good hints and background for why it's so stressful for children on the spectrum. And so parents have told me that it's particularly helpful because they just keep it on their bedside table and then, okay, now I need to know what's the next thing. Another thing that's in the book that I wanted to be kind of clear with is a lot of families will ask me, at what point do I tell my child that they have a spectrum disorder? And so I've got a chapter in there, and a lot of times I'll refer them back to that. So it's been very helpful in that way. I also wanted a book that was very uplifting in that I've learned so much for those that I'm lucky enough to work with. So I wanted it to be more from their point of view, and a lot of the work that I do is trying to help people understand. You need to understand where they're coming from. And Shannon, you just said it when we had the break, is that, you know, stepping more into our world, but to do that, you've got to get in their world first. Yeah. So that was the whole purpose behind the book. And a lot of the experiences that I've had with the kids have been working on whether it's cognitive behavior therapy, their ABA program, or within our social skills groups.
Well, and as we said during the last segment, you know, you have a very unique perspective on this because you are a licensed educational psychologist, you are a cognitive behavioral therapist, and you're a board-certified behavioral analyst. And those three things combined allow you to have a very interesting perspective. We talk all the time about perspective taking and how we're often teaching kids on the spectrum to, you know, take perspective, but it's equally important that we're taking perspective. So I think you've got a unique perspective to be able to look at from several different points how to be able to help some of these individuals. I think this book is really remarkable. Tell our viewers where they can get it.
Well, you can get it at Barnes & Noble, but you can also get it at Amazon.com. There's also a Kindle version, so you can keep it right there on your iPad, and when you're out and about, you can refer to it. And I believe Walmart.com. You can also get it from Walmart.com.
Okay. And now you mentioned that, you know, really your inspiration for it was to be able to give this to parents, but for those really high-functioning young people that are perhaps in their late teens, early 20s, maybe even late 20s, are you seeing any kind of a benefit for them reading it themselves?
You know, that's a really good point, Shannon. I have had a couple come back and say that they read it for themselves, and they find it. As a matter of fact, I think my highest compliment was a man on the spectrum who contacted me and said that he had read it and that he felt that finally he was reading a book, not necessarily autobiography, because that's not what it was intended, of course, to be, but he was reading a book that really told him that there's somebody out there that gets the spectrum. So yes, it can be helpful. I've also had the flip side where I've had some families that have older children that have said, I wish I had this book when they were younger.
Yeah.
So.
Well, really, really remarkable. We want to encourage people to get that book. I love how you've put it together so that it's in those small, bite-sized lessons. I have said in the past, and I hope you won't take this wrong, those are the kinds of books that are ideal bathroom books. You put it in the bathroom, it's there, you know, so that you can read a small little bit that enriches your life. It's like making sure that there is no wasted time in your life. So I encourage people all the time to take those kinds of books and put them. And not only when you put it in the bathroom, then other people who visit get an opportunity to sit and read something that if you handed them the book, they may not read. But if it's sitting in your bathroom, people will pick things up and read them. I think that that's an ideal thing to be able to do. And maybe you want to have two, one for your bedside and one to put in the bathroom, so that when your mother-in-law comes over, she might read something and buy a vowel. I don't have them. People always think that I've got a mother-in-law that I've got a gripe against. I don't. My poor mother-in-law is no longer with us and wasn't when I started dating my husband. But I heard lots of people complaining about their mothers-in-law and how can we get them on the same page. This might be the way to do that. In any case, we've got more to talk with you about. We want to talk about your wonderful foundation and your Friends Club. So we're going to take a break and we're going to come back and talk with Dr. Cynthia Norral about that. Stick with us.
Hello, fellow activists. Let's talk about step 6, live in gratitude and give back. Have you ever noticed that it's impossible to feel sorry for yourself when you focus on your blessings? I have an exercise for you. Take out 5 pennies. I want each penny to represent something you're thankful for today. Now, I bet not one of those pennies represented something material, but that every one of them represented someone you love or a moment you shared with that someone.
Go through life parched and empty, standing knee-deep in a river and dying of thirst.
There's a song by Kathy Mattea called Standing Knee-Deep in a River and Dying of Thirst. Sometimes we need to look at the river of blessings flowing underneath us, and then we see we're not so thirsty after all. Once you realize how fortunate you are, you can freely give back to others. And there's nothing that will make you feel more fortunate than giving to those less fortunate than you. So start your day with an attitude of gratitude. And until next time, keep the faith.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We are here via Skype with Dr. Cynthia Norral, and she is an amazing nationally certified cognitive behavioral therapist. She's a board-certified behavioral analyst, and she is a licensed educational psychologist. That's a mouthful to be able to say, but you're also the clinical director of the Comprehensive Autism Services and Education, which is CASE, Inc. We should mention that if people want to go to your website, it's casefamily.com. And we've been talking with you about the many things that you do and your wonderful book, Quirky Yes, Hopeless No, subtitled Practical Tips to Help Your Child with Asperger's Syndrome Be More Socially Accepted. Wonderful, wonderful book. But I'd like to take a couple of minutes with you, Dr. Norral, to talk about your foundation and about your Friends Club. So can you tell us about, first, let's start with the foundation. Tell us what your foundation's name is.
The foundation's name is Ho Aloha, so Ho Aloha Foundation. It means friend in Hawaiian, and our foundation was conceived to help young adults after some of the funding sources kind of run out. So this is after high school, or it can be in high school, and to help with that transition to community college, to work, to be social, continue to be social, having a social network. And we're really excited because we're funding a young man to go on a special field trip back east with his school. And the other foundation that I have is called the Cynthia Norrell Foundation. And the purpose behind that is an opportunity for families to get things like iPads. I'm hoping at some point to even contribute towards a service dog for families. So I'm really excited about both of our foundations.
Okay, so how can people find out more about these foundations and potentially participate?
Okay, Ho Aloha Foundation is Ho, H-O, and then Aloha, ALO.org. Foundation, hoalohafoundation.org. And the Cynthia Norrell Foundation will also be on .org. That website is going to be going live pretty soon.
Okay.
And they can contact via the foundations, and there's also information about the different scholarships that we do on our websites, and also applications.
Okay, and so if people, frequently people want to make donations to different organizations, what are you looking for? Donations ideally that are monetary, or are you looking for donations of other things as well?
Well, we are looking for both. For Ho'oloha, we're looking for some individuals that like to participate with our young adults. That would be great, participating their time or participating their efforts of helping to find out organizations and businesses that will support our young adults. And we're also looking for monetary donations as well. For the Cynthia Norrell Foundation, we're looking more for those that are looking for some support. That is a foundation that I've set up as more of a private foundation.
Okay.
It's not a non-public.
Well, we get people who write us all the time who are looking for, where can I find a place for a grant for an iPad, or where can I find support for, so when I get somebody, I will be happy to send them to you, but where is the best place for me to send them to in the interim until your website is up?
They can do it from drcynthianorrell.com.
Okay.
All of the websites are connected to Dr. Cynthia Norrell, and that's NORALL.com.
Okay, great. So talk to us a little bit about the Friends Club.
Well, Friends Club is a program that I started back in 1999 because I wanted to provide a social skills / social thinking or social cognitive program for kids on the end of the spectrum where they're very verbal, and they're able to do a lot more of that cognitive kind of thinking. And our Friends Club has morphed into this wonderful program where it's for kids from 3 to young adults, and I have different groups, and we have about 6 to 8 per group, and we run our groups in the evenings here in our Carlsbad office, and we also run them in our Hawaii office. And it's a safe place for these kids to come in and be with some other kids that are like them, that have similar interests. But then we also merge in a therapeutic component too, because we've got lessons that we're trying to teach, whether it's like you were saying earlier, the perspective, thinking about others. What I always tell the kids is that my kinds of kids, or the kids on the spectrum, are thinkers. And the other types of people are people thinkers. And so when they come to Friends Club, they'll often say, oh, it means I get to make a friend. And I'll say, yes, absolutely. But one thing you're learning is to think about how people thinkers think, and to kind of interpret that for them.
I love that.
So it's a safe place, but at the same time, the anxiety is kind of reduced because these are kids that are very aware that they're different, and they're very aware that there's things that they don't do very well. And so when they come in here, they get to see other kids that are working on similar kinds of things. And just kind of a little bit of a plug for my own 2 children, not on the spectrum, but they're grown now. They're in college. But my daughter was helping me out when she was 9, and one of the things that she would say is, Mommy, you're teaching them things that we already know. They just don't know them. Yeah. And so it was really cool and validating for me that she was able to give me that perspective. And it's been a lot of fun. We enjoy them.
Well, you're doing an incredible body of work. What an amazing gift you are, especially in the Carlsbad area, but you also have offices in Hawaii, correct?
Correct. We used to have an office in Northern California in Napa, but that one we no longer have. So we just have Carlsbad and then Hawaii.
Okay, well, a gift in both of those places. We want to encourage people to go to your website, Dr. Cynthia Norral with 2Ls.com, or to go to casefamily.com, C-A-S-E family, Family.com, to find out more information. And of course, we encourage people to pick up your book, which is Quirky Yes, Hopeless No. The subtitle is Practical Tips to Help Your Child with Asperger's Syndrome Be More Socially Accepted. And as we mentioned in a previous part of the interview, you can get that on Amazon.com. You can also get it in Barnes & Noble. So, Dr. Norral, thank you so much for your work. I would love to, from time to time, if we get a question that we think you're particularly suited to answer, maybe we could work something out where we could have you on the show from time to time to answer some questions.
I would love to, Shannon, and thank you so much for inviting me today.
Thank you so much. We're going to say goodbye, and we're going to take a break, and then we're going to be back with more of Autism Live after these messages. Stick with us.
Skills is an online program that provides assessment, curriculum, positive behavior support planning for challenging behavior, and progress tracking, and it does this all in one place. The skills assessment and curriculum addresses 8 areas of development, which even includes advanced higher level areas such as executive functions and cognition, which pretty much makes skills the only ABA-based set of curricula for teaching more complex skills, things like problem solving, planning, self-management, perspective taking, and even inferring and predicting others' private events. Skills is a 4-step system. Step 1 is to add the child to your account. Step 2 is to start assessment. The skills assessment is the only ABA-based assessment with psychometric research demonstrating the language subscale to have excellent reliability. Every area of human functioning and typical child development from infancy to adolescence was researched, making the skills assessment the most comprehensive of its kind in the world, and we're quite proud of that.
Skills is easy to use. Simply click Start Assessment and begin answering questions. Or simply type in a keyword, find specific activities to assess, and add activities to treatment. Step 3. Choose activities. Once you've completed the assessment, Skills selects from a pool of 4,000 activities categorized by age, level, and skill type to provide you with exactly those activities each child needs. Start by choosing a curriculum, then a lesson, and finally an activity. Click the information icon to view prerequisites, ages in which targets develop, examples, and IEP goals. Click the video icon to watch a short video. Once you've identified an activity you want to teach, adding activities to treatment is a snap. Step 4. Start treatment. Here you can access customizable activity lesson details, add your own customized targets and exemplars, and edit an activity status such as introducing or mastering it. You can even print handouts such as worksheets, tracking forms, visual aids, and other materials. Skills also offers multiple progress charts mapping curriculum progress, lesson progress, and cumulative number of activities and targets mastered over time. The Skills language curriculum is categorized by verbal behavior type so that users can identify progress for verbal operants, such as echoics, mans, tacs, and interverbals.
Skills is one of the only programs that provides the ability to write behavior intervention plans, or BIPs, for challenging behavior.
With just a few clicks, the outline of the behavior intervention plan is written for you and ready to be printed and implemented.
You can learn more about Skills today and get started by visiting us at www.skillsforautism.com, or you can call us at 877-975-4559. Skills. Progress starts here.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We ask you a question every day, and then we hope to have an opportunity to address it on the show. So our question that we asked today, and I want to get it exactly the way we worded it, and of course I can't do that now with what I did. The question of the day was, do you believe it is possible to recover from the elements of autism that qualify as a disorder? We are, the blog right now that's on our website talks about autism and the R words, and I bring up the 3 R words that seem to create a lot of, feeling around them. Certainly there is the R word that, we have the whole end the word, the campaign to end the word, spread the word to end the word. That's what I'm trying to come up with, because we want to stop using the word retarded. That is a word that has been, while it stood for at one time something that was a very specific condition, it has morphed into something that it no longer should be. So everyone would like to spread the word to end the word, right? But in autism, there are other R words that are equally as incendiary, and one of them is recovery. It is a word that many people have asked me to stop using here on the show. And I wrote this blog about all my feelings about all the R words that we have, because it's been a huge crisis of conscience on my mind. I'll be very honest with you that I've had several really good friends, I'm tearing up thinking about it, that are on the autism spectrum, that are adults, that I have so much respect for, and that I would want to do nothing in this world that would hurt them, that have asked me very politely to stop using the word recovery. And at one point I said to one of them, okay, I will stop using this term. I don't want to be in a position where I'm hurting you. And if this word hurts you, then I will stop using this word. And then my next thing that I said was, how would you feel if I used this phrase instead? And what the person said to me is, you don't get it, Shannon. You don't get it. The fact that you're still wanting to find a phrase for it, you don't get it. It's the entire concept of it that I need you to stop talking about. And then I said, that I cannot do. That I just cannot do. If you, and I'm still in a place of it where I haven't made complete and total peace with it, but here is my understanding, and why I am where I am at, that we have a set of criteria that qualifies you, as I mentioned earlier in this hour, for a disorder. And it's very clear in the DSM-5 that, it lists things, and I think most of us can read the list of things and go, oh, I do that a little bit, I do this a little bit, oh, I definitely do that. And yet we fully read the diagnosis and we go, but I don't qualify for the disorder. I don't have enough of the aspects of it. And there's one phrase in it where it says, and this is affecting your life negatively to the point where you can't accomplish the things that you want. It's some phrase that's along those lines. And then you go, well, it doesn't really do that. There are times when it gets in the way of things, but it doesn't really affect my life. I'm leading a pretty happy, lucky life. And if I wanted to work on those things, I could. But sometimes I choose not to, right? So we don't qualify for a disorder. And the truth of the matter is that if a person, everyone's making progress all the time, right? We have the potential to make progress. And there have been many cases, many cases of individuals on the autism spectrum that statistically we know, especially if we have people between the ages of 2 and 5 who start getting 25, I think more realistically, 30 to 40 hours of quality ABA therapy for 2 years at a minimum, and sometimes it's significantly longer than that, that they will make such progress on those very specific things that 47% of them statistically will no longer qualify after a certain period of time for that diagnosis of a disorder. That does not mean that they have been brainwashed, that they have been changed into other people, that they have no issues whatsoever, but it means that their issues are no longer impeding their progress in the life that they want to lead, which is, I think, what we all want for our kids and we all want for ourselves, right? So to have a hope that there is that kind of a thing out there, I think it's a good thing to hope for, and especially because we know, and science has shown us time and time again, that within those conditions, we can get it to 47% of those kids will, quote unquote, recover from the disabling aspects of autism. I try not to say anymore recover from autism. I think that is mislabeling it. Recovering from the disabling aspects of autism is what I've tried to say. I understand from my friends with autism that that is still offensive to them because they feel that they are autism, that it is them, and that by saying recovering from the disabling aspects of it, I'm still saying that they are bad. I'm not. Gosh, I'm not. And I want all of you to know that I My son is one of those people. I couldn't love him more if you sliced and diced me, right? So I mean no disrespect to who you are. But just like, I am somebody, I've shared before on the show that I had a panic disorder. There was a point of time in my life where my panic would get to the point where I could not drive my car on the freeway. I could not leave my house for a period of time. That was a disorder. I was 100% clear on it, as were the people who were diagnosing me. I currently do not qualify, maybe later on today I will, but currently in this moment in time, I don't qualify for the disorder. So do I not ever have panic? Do I not ever have anxiety? You betcha I do. I certainly do, but I can get on with my day in most respects. Right? I'm still, not going to go surfboarding around sharks. I have too much anxiety for that. And there are other things that I choose not to do, but is it disabling my life? No. I don't love elevators, but we were just making the point yesterday that I can take an elevator to the 18th floor. I can. It's not my favorite thing, but I can do it. So I'm not disabled by it. Might put a crimp in my day, and we'll see if it gets to the disabling point. But my point is that I am not panic. I do not identify myself as being panic. I understand that it's different for those of you who, when you were younger, you were labeled, you were told you were autistic, and you feel that that is a part of you. And I would love it if there was a time when you could. I'm trying desperately to understand from your point of view and to make it work. And I would love it if you could see that I'm not talking about you when I say that some people can recover from the disabling aspects of it. So anyway, we asked you guys this question and we wanted your opinion. Do you believe that someone can? Somebody wrote in and said, Dr. Grandin has said that even though she has the ability to function in ordinary life, OCD and anxiety are still present in her life. And I've had several occasions now to meet Dr. Grandin and to interview her. And she believes that, and I believe her when she says this, that she still qualifies for a diagnosis of autism, that she does not consider herself recovered. And she has very specific reasons why she doesn't. And the OCD and the anxiety are part of that, but other reasons that she feels that she still qualifies for the diagnosis. She has found enough of her life to work that she has expressed to me that she's happy. And I think that that's important above all else, above any label that any of us can put. She is happy with the way she thinks. She is happy the way things are. She's not looking, she's still making progress on all kinds of things. And I think that that's important to her. But in any case, another person says, look at Temple Grandin, for example. A mom wrote in and said, I do believe it is a condition that can be overcome. My son, for instance, is 3 and autistic, but he only has mild problems. His vocabulary is great and his overall speech is at 91%. His milestones are where they should be and his cognitive skills are above and beyond a 3-year-old. However, he does have behavioral problems such as self-injury, echoes himself, hyperactivity, OCD tendencies. He lines up his toys, does activities and patterns, etc. And he has sensory processing issues. I feel by addressing these issues early, most of them can be overcome, and there have been several cases to prove that individuals with autism can live full, successful lives. And I just want to say to that mom, I'm in agreement with you that those things left unchecked, those things like self-injurious behavior, echolalia, hyperactivity, OCD tendencies, are things that in a 3-year-old we can look at and go, a lot of people will look at it and go, oh, well, really, how much is that disrupting his life? But the truth of the matter is that it can and will disrupt his life at 3. And while it's not as noticeable at 3, it's going to become much more noticeable at 5 if some of those things aren't helped and supported. It was very hard for me when my son was 3 that there were certain things that he was doing that I was like, really? We can't just let him do that? I have the benefit now of having an 11-year-old that I look back and I go, holy moly, that's why we couldn't just let that be unchecked. Some of them I fought for and said, leave that alone, and I kick myself a time or two and go, we should have been on that. Other things, I'm so grateful that, we did change, and so he has skill sets and not struggling in those areas. And I applaud you, because I do think that those are all things that he can be helped with, so that when he's 5, he may still have some OCD tendencies, like me, but he'll be able to do what he needs to do to make the friends that he needs to make. And he'll deal with when there's a noise happening over there or there's papers on that teacher's desk that are rattling for his sensory issues, so that he can still focus on what's happening and not miss the good stuff that he wants to get at. In any case, we will continue to talk about this topic this week, and I hope that you stay with us. Stay with us. Argue your point. Remember that our topic this week is fighting for what you believe in. And I welcome all opinions to this table. I absolutely do, including the ones when you say, I wish you wouldn't say that. It hurts me to think that I'm hurting your feelings by talking about a concept that makes you feel bad. But I can't let go of all the kids and all the parents coming through to let them know what the hope is, that they don't have to. You have to remember that in some cases there are kids who aren't able to function and communicate, and they deserve to know, those parents and those kids deserve to know that they can make progress so that they can get to the point where they can verbalize and say, I hate it when you say this because it bugs me and it makes me feel less than. We want for all of our kids to get to the point where they can express their feelings as well as you're expressing your feelings. And I don't think we'll get there unless people know that progress can be made. Help me to know what words I can say that you can live with that let us all get to the progress. I'm willing to learn. We're going to take a break now, and we're going to go to the A Word, which is an ongoing documentary following a little boy, Jack Riley, who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. We get to take a look into his family as it's growing, because he's become a big brother, to see how they deal with having professionals in their home helping them to work on things using quality ABA. It's not easy, but it's kind of miraculous. So take a look. This is the A Word.
I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack.
Jack Riley.
He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast.
Exciting.
I say Jack, Jack, Jack is my buddy. Jack is my buddy. Everybody around is so down with Jack.
Okay, Jack Riley, can you tell me? And when you're calm and nice, that makes everybody happy. And what are the pictures in this one?
Not calm, mean.
Mean. And when you're not calm and you're mean, that makes everybody sad. And when you're calm and nice to Lainey, you get to have special stickers put on your day. And when you get enough stickers, you get to have what?
Cereal bar.
So with a lot of our kids, sometimes they have trouble dealing with certain situations or changes. Diana wanted us to do is write a social story about being nice to Lainey, things you can do with Lainey Grace besides Pusher. The results of it is he's happy, Lainey Grace is happy, Mom and Dad are happy, therefore making him happy. And he gets the happy points on the chart. And we're supposed to write it in words that they understand. So it's pretty much we're going to be writing it together.
I made a sticker to play.
What should our story be called, Jack Riley? Should it be called Being Nice to Lainey Grace?
Yeah, that's the one you picked.
Or should it be called Lainey Grace, My Little Sister? What should it be called?
Lainey Grace and My Little Sister.
Okay, that's a good one. All right. What about your little sister? Do you love Lainey?
Yeah.
Okay. When she cries, how does that make you feel?
Sad.
Makes you feel sad. What are things you can do to make Lainey happy again?
Kiss her.
Kiss her? Okay. That's a good one. So when Lainey cries, it makes me sad. I can give her... Let's read it together, okay?
Lainey Grace is my little sister. I love her very much. Lainey Grace.
Does that sound like a good story?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Okay. You walked by Lainey doing a nice job. High five. Let's go put on a happy point. Woo! Let's
Way
go.
to go. That was a happy point, buddy.
Go get a happy point. Yeah.
Woo!
Happy point. Oh, this way.
So what the heck is a happy point?
A happy point is we've decided that Jack's aggressiveness with his sister is not being curbed by punishment. So we decided to really try to catch him being good And that is where the happy point derives from. Good point here, good example.
Good being nice.
Wait! That's a happy point. I don't even need to explain much more, do I? Well, so we're trying to teach him the good behavior, and you can't ignore the bad behavior. Like when he's aggressive with me, I try to ignore it so he doesn't get attention from it. But with her, obviously, she can be injured. So we're trying to curb that by making him feel really good when he's not aggressive towards her. And I think we're having a little success, and I think we need patience because it's going to be gradual. But you just saw a good example of what we're hoping will happen more, and then eventually less.
So he earned his cereal bar.
He earned a cereal bar! Good God! Can I leave now? I gotta get my son a cereal bar. Okay.
Welcome back to Autism Live. That was the A Word, an amazing series. We applaud this family for allowing us to have a window into what was happening. It's such an opportunity to learn about what this is like, both from the emotional side, but from the educational standpoint of teaching a child new skills. So check this entire series out. It has its very own YouTube page, and there's something for all of us to learn from this series. Okay, I want to go now, because in just a little while we're going to be joined by Dr. Linda Copeland, and I want to remind everybody that Dr. Copeland is a board-certified behavior analyst, but she's also a developmental pediatrician. It's like the day for putting BCBAs together with other things that make great sense. Dr. Copeland joins us every third Tuesday of the month to answer questions that you guys have sent in. And so we're going to be joined by her in just a few minutes. But I wanted to take a question that somebody sent in for me. And I always like to remind you that I'm not an expert. So, but somebody said, "Hi, Shannon, do you believe there are any drawbacks to keeping a child in preschool an extra year? My son is almost 5 and due to start kindergarten in August. He's on the smaller and thinner side. He just doesn't seem ready, and we started ABA at age 4, but just starting skills. Thank you for your time." He has 25 hours of ABA a week. Okay, so and the one thing that I do bring to the table is that I'm a former teacher. The most of the time that I taught college, but for a good solid 3 years, I taught. I taught for 2 years in a private school and taught age ranges from grade 5 to 9, and then taught in a public school for another 3 years, teaching grades 7 through 12th grade. So, I don't have extensive experience working with the younger kids. I mean, a little bit, but not extensive experience. But here's what I will say for what I hear from other teachers is that for some kids, it's not a good thing, and it's important to get them into school and get them into kindergarten. But here are the reasons that they list, okay? One is that they get bored if you wait too long. It doesn't sound like that's going to be an issue with your child. Another one is that if they get, especially for boys, if they get to be substantially bigger than the other kids, it can be something that creates a problem all throughout their school years if they're just that much bigger developmentally, and it sounds like your child isn't, so that's not a concern either. And then the third concern is about what happens around the age that they graduate, because if a child is about to turn 18, let's say that they're 18 years old at the beginning of their senior year, it can create problems because they legally have the right to do certain things and to be emancipated, and that sometimes families have difficulty getting their kids through that senior year when they are 18. And for other kids, it can mean that they, will start to delve into other kinds of issues, both boys and girls. They tend to be different kinds of problems. So I would say to you that I don't think that any of those problems are really things that you can give a whole lot of credence to. Even if I'm doing the math right, if you waited a year, then it means that your child would turn 18 midway through their senior year. Does that make sense? I think so. You can tell I'm not a great mathematician. But at this point, right? I think that's the case. But for our kids on the autism spectrum, I don't know that makes a big difference, them turning 18 beforehand. But something for you to think about. Okay. then we look at the other side. The teachers say, what are the reasons for keeping a child back from starting another year? I hear hands down the teachers say, if there's a year that we prefer to keep a child back and not have stigma attached to it, it's the preschool year. You can always keep a child back later on, but it comes with stigma attached to it. I know when my son started kindergarten, there were at least 2 or 3 kids in his kindergarten class who were about to turn 6, and he was about to turn 5, or he had just turned 5, right? I think so. So it was perfect. Like, everybody sort of accepts that some kids start kindergarten when they're 5, some kids start kindergarten when they're 6, and everybody just sort of grabs a whoopee. And there's no, like, well, why did you do that? I remember talking to one of the parents, and she said, I just didn't think they were ready. Emotionally, I didn't think they were ready to be away from home. I didn't think they were ready to do this. And what I saw with that specific individual, and I continue to see with that individual, is that they excel. That when they came to school a year later, they flew through everything and continue to be at the top of the class. And I think, according to Mom, if they had sent the individual a year earlier, that wouldn't have been the case. So I think that's an ideal circumstance in which you want to, and I think you kind of have a plus because your child's birthday is midway through the year. And especially if he's on the smaller, thinner side, I think that's another reason for doing that. And I think if you just started getting ABA at 4, so you're like 6 months in, it sounds like, I hear Dr. Grampiche say all the time, it's much better to get it all together and under control before you get heavy into the school. And, some places have half-day kindergarten and some places have full-day kindergarten. Statistically, we know that full-day kindergarten for typical kids is better than half-day kindergarten. But for our kids on the autism spectrum, if they still need the skills to be in the room, not so much the case, right? So if you can give him a whole other year of ABA to start that year out, I think from the things that you're saying, it sounds like that's your gut instinct. And I don't see any particular drawbacks except from the fact that he's going to be in school and at home a year longer when he's 18. And if you can deal with that, as I think most of us can, then I encourage you to follow your gut on that. Make sense? And, I'm curious as to what your preschool is saying, what, not necessarily that it's the be-all, end-all, but what are they advising and what your school district is advising. A lot of times school districts will push to get kids into the classroom now because, stop and think about it, they feel like they have the answer, right? The answer is to send your kid to school, so don't wait, right? Just like I would say to you, I think that the answer is getting your kid good quality ABA, so I'm never going to sit here and say, wait on that, right? I'm going to be like, do that now. So just keep that in mind when you talk to the school. They're going to want your child to come immediately. Not always the thing. But the other thing that I want to say to you, if you're getting 25 hours of ABA, is there a way that you can bump that up over 30? I would be much happier if your child was getting 35 or 40. I would take 30. And it sounds like you just started skills, and I would be encouraging you to ask what are some lessons you can be doing for your child on skills, and even if you could get 5 hours a week of you working on things from skills that are targeted, that whoever is designing your program said, here are the 5 lessons that we'd like you to work on, or here are the 3 lessons we want you to work on for 5 hours a week, to get it over 30 hours. That will make a tremendous difference for you and for your child getting ready to go to kindergarten, whether you start them this fall or a year from now. The one other thing I will say that I'm thinking about is that I was terrified that my son was not ready to go to preschool, let alone kindergarten. And I was terrified when kindergarten came. I was like, he's not going to be ready. He's not going to be ready. And everybody said to me, they have this mysterious, magical thing that happens and they get ready. And I want to tell you that 7 days before my son started kindergarten, everything changed. We had been working up towards it, but I saw a change in him and he was ready. And if you had asked me 14 days before, I would have told you he wasn't ready. So keep that in mind too. okay? That it's still a ways away from knowing, like it's January, and what he's going to be like in August is a world away from where he is now. So ask your ABA provider too, I guess, is my final word on that. All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by our fabulous, Dr. Linda Copeland. She is a BCBA, and she is a developmental pediatrician, and she's going to be answering your questions, so stick with us.
When you find out you're having a boy, you always think like, oh, he's going to play football, he's going to do this and that. And then when he's diagnosed, all those things get washed away.
It's like that piece that's always in the back of your mind, where is he, what is he doing, is he safe?
We really didn't know what we were dealing with. I wish that they could have directed me a little bit more and provided me some information.
I was a young mom. I didn't know what it was like to raise a boy, despite a boy with autism.
Hundreds of thousands of families are not getting the help they need for their children with autism all around the country. ACT Today is determined to bridge the gap. These families really have to go through a lot to get a grant. The application process isn't easy. The records, the diagnosis proof, they're really battling for their kids. So when we can give them a grant, it is so wonderful to see that they succeed in getting that help for their children. Our founder, Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet, is an amazing woman, and she is one of the world's foremost authority on behavior of children with autism. She's extremely knowledgeable, and she oversees every single grant we give. She is part of that process. People may think of autism care and treatment as simply schooling or therapy, but we provide important safety supports, things like fencing, for example. The whole family's living in fear of that child running out into traffic. I recently delivered an iPad to a little boy with some of the apps that are out there for children with autism. Miracles happen.
I got the iPad from ACT.
From ACT,
What did it say? Can you repeat that, Dustin?
I got the iPad from ACT.
We have helped so many military families, and when I think of these brave families that are fighting two battles, one to protect our country and one for the right treatment and care for their children, it breaks my heart, and I think we have to do more as a nation to help them.
There's not a day that doesn't go by that we don't think about it. Some people say, oh, he's normal. You don't see the battles that I see every single day. My husband does have to deploy, and when they get on that bus, that might be the last time that my kids ever see them.
So I called, and they informed me that he had received the grant, which was like a blessing from above. I was just like speechless. I just started to cry because, without it, we would have been lost.
The ACT grant was a total miracle. Without that, we wouldn't be able to receive the service dog. So we're so appreciative what they've done for us as a family.
Recently, ACT Today funded a program for military children with autism in San Diego, the Inclusion Films program, which is run by Joey Travolta, and teaches kids on the autism spectrum literal filmmaking skills. They learn how to make a movie.
Are we ready? There you go, got it. Okay. Everything that goes into the process of making a film goes into everyday life. So they're learning life skills, they're learning to collaborate.
It was really nice to know how much they were enjoying this camp, and they're with people who are supporting them, and they're making them feel great about themselves and their differences and their similarities. And I get two kids that are working together and apart and together and apart, so it's an interrelationship as well as a camp and a learning experience.
It's so fulfilling when I get letters. One stands out for me, a boy who was 14 with Asperger's, and we gave him a grant to go to a drama camp. He wrote to us and said, "Dear ACT Today, thank you for letting me belong for the first time in my life." These kids are remarkable. We underestimate them. They're so knowledgeable, they're so capable, and we can change the life of a family, which means changing the life of a community.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We are so lucky and so fortunate that we have Dr. Linda Copeland on the line with us via Skype. Welcome back to Autism Live, Dr. Copeland.
Oh, I'm glad to be back.
We're thrilled to have you. Dr. Copeland is always our guest on the third Tuesday of the month. She is a BCBA, a board-certified behavior analyst. She's also a developmental pediatrician. We mentioned at the start of the show that that is so rare. I refer to you as a unicorn. But you're a wonderful unicorn. To be able to have both those things in one person is a fabulous resource, and we love having the opportunity for people to pose questions to be able to ask you. So we're going to start with a pretty lengthy question, which I'm sure you're going to have a pretty lengthy answer to because there's so many different things included in this question. So they wrote in and said, "Hi, this question is for Dr. Copeland. My 4.5-year-old son is always on the go. He has a lot of energy always, and he's on a GFCF diet, so I know his yeast is under control." Now, I don't know that that necessarily follows. She says, I was giving him...
I was going to address that, yeah.
Yes. I was giving him GABA for a few months with little improvement. Now I ordered GABA again, but it also has something called niacinamide and... I don't even know what that word is.
Inositol.
Okay. Ever heard of this? If not, do you recommend something that would calm him down, but something that does not need a prescription? I want his body to be calm, but not for him to be like a zombie. He's about 32 pounds, and thank you so much. Now, we dealt with a question that was had some similarity to this before, but with new information in here, and a lot of people have been writing in talking about, kids who are on the go, and we get a lot of questions about focus. So I think it's worthwhile to talk about this. So where would you like to start, Dr. Copeland?
Yeah. Well, there's so many parts to this question, and there's really so many parts to the issue of focus too. We focus with our frontal lobes of our brain especially, but the brain, of course, is all interconnected. So we're looking at brain chemistry and physiology and so many issues. With regard to the yeast question, I think you hinted, Shannon, that just because the child's on the gluten-free, casein-free, or GFCF diet doesn't automatically in and of itself mean that all yeast issues have been taken care of. Some children need to go on further to the specific carbohydrate diet. There's other things that may be need to be restricted, and that could be a whole topic unto itself.
Absolutely.
But kind of looking at it from a nutritional point of view, it's good that she's giving a wholesome diet, that she's avoiding some things that she has evidence that her son is sensitive to. So she probably is already avoiding artificial dyes and preservatives in food. It's especially important to avoid red dyes. There's a subgroup of the population of children that red dyes will just aggravate hyperactivity tremendously. So I wanted to point that out. And then additionally, it may not just all be a yeast issue, which, you can go further beyond the GFCF diet with other healing diets if there is a yeast issue, but it could also be food sensitivities. And I would again refer to Julie Matthews' book, Nourishing Hope, that some children are sensitive to the natural salicylates and phenols in foods. Now, red dyes are an artificial phenol. You definitely want to stay away from that. But there's some natural salicylates and phenols with foods. So, and you can't completely eliminate salicylates and phenols in the diet, but you could talk with a nutritionist and see if he's eating way too many foods that have natural salicylates and phenols, and if he might be sensitive to them. And if so, then there's other diets like the Feingold diet and the fail-safe diet that could be considered. So there's the nutritional aspect, and I'll bring up a potential treatment at some point related to that too. Now, with regard to the specific question about niacinamide and inositol that was in her latest GABA supplement, one, I can see why she's supplementing him with GABA. There's a lot of GABA is the major inhibitory neurotransmitter. And it is known that a certain percentage of children with autism spectrum disorders, not all of them, but a certain percent have like an attention deficit hyperactive disorder component to their symptoms. And GABA being inhibitory, it's hoping that it will have a calming effect. It hasn't, there's not a lot of studies on that, but I can see why she's doing it. So about niacinamide, what that is vitamin B3. So it is an essential nutrient. It is something that we need. So it's not bad that the GABA that she bought of vitamins. So if it's around the recommended daily allowance of niacinamide, I think that's fine. And then what inositol is, there's different types of inositol. Some come from plants and natural plant inositols. Others come from animal products. Those are called myoinositols. And the niacinamide and inositol work together. And they have actually been scientifically studied, not specifically for ADHD, but for anxiety, and inositol in particular for panic attacks. And there's some evidence based that they are mildly calming. And they're generally pretty well tolerated without many side effects. So I would reassure her about that supplement that she's using, as long as it doesn't have mega doses. And then she might want to read the labels in more detail to see what kind of inositol. Is it more plant inositol or the animal product, the myoinositol? The myoinositol is easier for our body to use. The plant inositols can be in the form of what are called phytates, and too many phytates can actually deplete the body of minerals, important minerals like calcium and magnesium and zinc, if it were in a super high dose. So that would be the only thing I'd have her look at, if she'll just read the label real carefully.
Do we have a reference for what would be a high dose?
I'd have to look. I always have to look it up. If you read the label, it'll often say something like recommended daily allowance. Right. Or RDA, and give you the percent.
Yeah.
So you don't want something that's like 333% of the rate. If it's like 25% of the recommended, or even 100%, you're probably okay. You just don't want you way over the amount that most people need.
Greatly. Okay, great.
Does that help?
That absolutely helps. Thank you.
Yeah. And then another treat, in addition to considering the Feingold diet and fail-safe diet, which tries to somewhat restrict the natural salicylates in foods, and although again you can't completely restrict them, there was a scientific study that, speaking of natural treatments for attention deficit disorder, is the omega-3 fatty acids. Which you can get, say, naturally in fish oil. And there's two parts to omega-3 fatty acids, the EPA and the DHA. So when you combine these two, they usually list them as a total milligram strength of omega-3s. And there are now two scientific studies specifically on ADHD, not on ADHD and autism, but on ADHD or hyperactivity overall, where supplementing with anywhere from 600 to 1,000 milligrams of omega-3 fatty acid per day did help the hyperactivity. So those are, I would say, continue to look at the yeast issue. Is another healing diet needed? Look at the salicylate and phenol issue. Think about the Feingold and fail-safe diets, and consider supplementing with omega-3s, and then the GABA inositol and niacinamide sounds like a fine supplement to me. So, and another issue we can get at, maybe we'll talk in a moment, but want your feedback on what we've talked about so far, but about whether he may have some sulfation issues.
Okay, why don't we take a short break, and then we'll come back and talk about, you can help me to understand what sulfation issues are. So you can educate me. I need to be edumacated. All right, so stick with us. More with Dr. Linda Copeland after these messages.
Hi, Lisa Ackerman back with Talk of Facts. Questions, real life questions and answers for the autism journey. Oh, are you ready for this one? Talk to me about puberty. So what I would recommend is, first and foremost, is the kids that have done the therapeutics, the medical, and the dietary allergen removal interventions tend to have an easier time at puberty. Seizures are really common for children on the spectrum, more than neurotypical populations, and they're especially most common right at or about puberty time. So it's extremely important, even if you have a 10-year-old, that you've already done an EEG, that you consider before they go through puberty to get a second EEG done. Just because you have one clean EEG with no abnormal brain activity or seizure activity, you need to do another one prior to puberty. That's one of the most common calls we get with teens on the spectrum, is they are often experiencing a seizure for what their family thinks is the first time. And the third thing is, you're gonna have a teenager, so you're really gonna have to kick it up a notch on those life skills, social skills, and getting your kid ready to be that teenager they need to be. So if you're doing that baby thing, and I know you are, where you're maybe making their lunches or helping them with laundry, we need to start bouncing some chores over to those kids. And we also need to increase social environments where they can be successful. So think about it. We've got 3 really important things that we need to look at. Puberty is a very serious issue, and we take it very seriously. So make sure you have all of your therapeutics, medical, and dietary interventions in place. Consider to do another 24-hour EEG with your physician prior to puberty. And the third most important thing, get ready to raise the bar. Your job is to really get them ready for life. And I know you can do it.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We have with us via Skype Dr. Linda Copeland. She is a wonderful developmental pediatrician, and she is a board-certified behavior analyst. And we refer to her as the unicorn because you just don't see that very often. Those two things together. In fact, you probably have never seen it anywhere before. But it is our gift that she is both of those things, and that she's willing to give us some time every third Tuesday of the month. She joins us in the second hour to answer questions. Now, we have been dealing with a very lengthy question that a parent wrote in, citing some different things going on with their child, that always on the go, having some difficulties with focusing. The parent referenced that he is on a GFCF diet, and a level of confidence that she was feeling that kept his yeast under control. We've already addressed that. I had some concerns about that because I know my son was on a GFCF diet, and that had nothing to do with his yeast issues until we combated that. Dr. Copeland's addressed that. We also have addressed some concerns that the parent had about a GABA supplement that she ordered that had other things in it, and Dr. Copeland already has talked about that. And talking about some other things that might be useful to this parent that don't involve a prescription, but that could potentially calm the child down, which hopefully would help with some of his focus, but not wanting to turn him into a zombie. Now, right before we went to break, Dr. Copeland mentioned sulfation. So help to educate me and our audience about what sulfation is and why that might be something that this parent wants to look at.
So sulfation is an important part of our body chemistry, and there have been some studies showing certain subgroups of children with autism, and we don't know how extensively this extends out to all children on the autism spectrum, but there are a number of studies showing a number of children with autism spectrum have trouble with their sulfation metabolism. And the sulfation metabolism is needed to process the phenols that I've mentioned in foods. These are common compounds in foods that can occur in a lot of healthy foods. But some, and salicylates, natural salicylates in foods are a type of phenol. And we know that some children are sensitive to the salicylates and phenols in food, and it can trigger hyperactive reactions. That's where Dr. Ben Feingold, an allergist at Kaiser many years ago, came up with the Feingold diet for hyperactivity, trying to restrict foods with salicylates especially. But that can be a very restrictive diet, and it can be a diet low in vitamin C, so you have to supplement. And the real issue may be that if you can help the sulfation metabolism, that maybe you don't have to be too restrictive. You can do kind of a modified Feingold or fail-safe diet, because a lot of the foods that you stay away from that have salicylates are otherwise very healthy foods, natural berries and apples and almonds and some foods you wouldn't want to have to stay away from unless you really need to. So the other part of it would be, can you test this child's sulfation chemistry? Ask their doctor to do that. And are there ways to naturally boost the sulfation chemistry so that they can handle those foods better and not have the reactions to the foods with salicylates and phenols?
Okay, so I'm going to my pediatrician, my regular pediatrician, and I want to check for the sulfation chemistry. Are those the words that I say to the doctor to get them to test for it?
That might be the start.
Okay.
And you might want to share some articles or the book by Julie Matthews so the doctor will know what to test.
Okay.
Because these are not common frequent tests that pediatricians offer. It's not like a complete blood count that you order to check for anemia or a blood sugar level or tests that most pediatricians are super familiar with. But if you get a pediatrician who's open, who's willing to look at the scientific literature, so it involves some important amino acids and other products in the body chemistry that a doctor can check in the blood. And one is the blood cysteine level, and that's cysteine. That's a very important amino acid. And that gets made into two things. One, it gets made into sulfate. And we need sulfate in our metabolism to detoxify and to process things, including processing things like phenols, as well as detoxifying heavy metals for that matter. And then cysteine also gets made into glutathione. And we've talked about glutathione earlier on this on previous Autism-live programs. It's a very important part of our antioxidant system. It really fights harmful oxidation and balances our oxidation and reduction chemistry in our body. Glutathione is one of the major chemicals or compounds in our body that does that. So you need the right level of cysteine to sulfate. So there's something called the cysteine to sulfate ratio. And several studies now have shown that that ratio is off in different ways in different kinds of, in different populations of individuals with autism spectrum disorder. And most of the time, either the cysteine is too low or the sulfate is too low or they're both too low. On rare occasion, you can actually have the cysteine be too high, but it's kind of blocked from doing what it needs to do. But that doesn't happen as often. If the cysteine is too low, you can actually supplement with a natural supplement called N-acetyl L-cysteine, and it's 500 milligrams a day as a capsule if the child can swallow a capsule, and there are liquid forms of it too. And you can also supplement with sulfate in the form of giving Epsom salts baths, or I'll refer to page 184 in Julie Matthews' book, Nourishing Hope, and she talks about using some of the Epsom salts mixed with a little warm water and your favorite hypoallergenic skin moisturizing lotion. And you can make a little moisturizing lotion that has a little sulfate in it that's somewhat absorbed through the skin, so you can help boost healthy sulfate in the body. So you can by strengthening the child's sulfation system, you don't have to worry about being too restrictive on the diet, and that can naturally help calm the child a little. There are limitations. Does that help?
That does. I'm still wondering though, you know how when you go to a typical doctor and they have that little form that they can order the blood tests from. So if I ask them to do the sulfation, or to check the cysteine to sulfate ratio, is that on that form, or are they going to have to write a specific?
It's probably not.
Okay, so they're going to have to write a prescription for it.
They'll probably have to write a prescription for it, and it may have to be sent to an outside lab.
Okay. Because that helps me to know, what I'm dealing with, when I go into the doctor's office and say, hey, because some, you want to know which doctor you want to go to do that, because, some doctors are not going to be into that, and they'll go, well, I don't think you need that. And other doctors are like, oh, they're excited to learn and they want to know that. So that's fascinating. Okay.
And while you're at it, they could add checking a glutathione level. I'm starting to do that more regularly on children that I see with autism spectrum disorder, but also with other conditions. I saw a child from Europe, a toddler, that ended up, she didn't have autism spectrum disorder, but she did have a mixed language disorder. And interestingly, she was low in her antioxidant system. Her glutathione level was low. So there's so much more we need to learn about how our body chemistry supports our learning and brain function and our acquisition of important skills.
And when you're low on glutathione, there's a supplement that you can take for that?
Well, here's the problem. You can't take glutathione directly orally. It's not well absorbed.
Okay.
But if you're low on cysteine gets converted directly to glutathione in the body. That's one of the two directions it goes in. It's a major source of making sulfate for our body to detoxify heavy metals and other things, and to be able to process the phenols and salicylates in our food. And then cysteine gets made into glutathione. So that is one way you can build up your glutathione level, as well as just in general eating a variety of healthy, fresh fruits and vegetables, lots and lots of vegetables and fruits, but avoiding ones that might be particular triggers that trigger a strong reaction.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that you brought up the fine gold and a modified fine gold, because all those years ago when we were looking at things for my son, after he'd been on GFCF and we saw a tremendous improvement, and then we saw that we kind of got stuck someplace and we were figuring out where to go next, and everybody was talking about the fine gold. I really have not heard that much difference about what's the difference between fine gold and fail-safe, but when I first started investigating fine gold, it seemed like to me that there were two different elements to it, and one element of it was the level of colors and artificial ingredients, and how important it was to get that out of the child's diet.
Yes, especially the artificial. Now, normal coloring in fresh fruits and vegetables that are there naturally, those are what are called phytonutrients, bioflavonoids. They can be very, very healthy, but in a few people, a few of them might cause reactions. So you don't want to restrict the diet totally, right, and not have enough fresh fruits and vegetables, that are very colorful. But you want the natural color. You don't want the artificial color.
Well, and it's interesting that we did the fine gold for a very short period of time as written, but then we switched very quickly to modified fine gold because we found that my son could handle, things like we were off of tomatoes for a year, and then we went back to tomatoes, and he can handle tomatoes, and he can handle apples and raisins and things like that. That for a while we cycled off of to see if we could make some improvement. But long term, for my child, we saw that getting rid of those artificial colors and flavors was fine. The one that we still restrict for him, for whatever reason, he has a reaction to the color in strawberries, but not in red raspberries. I don't get it. But he will have a reaction to strawberries when he has those. So I just want to put that out there for people who, because you mentioned modified fine gold, that there's a wide range of things there to look at, and you don't, as you said, you don't have to be as restricted as that. But I think one of the most important things that, for a lot of our kids, they don't need all of the things that for fine gold, but I don't think I know a single parent that hasn't seen a difference in their child's behavior and focus and level of consistent energy after having removed all those artificial colors and flavors.
And the pesticides, as you were saying, staying away from the GMOs, the pesticides, stay away from the dirty dozen.
Yeah, and again, for people just tuning into this show, the Environmental Working Group every year puts out an updated. There's the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen, and it's a great way for you to be able to put low to no pesticide things on your table affordably. There are 15 things that they always cite that they've tested for that year and said we don't see why you can't buy it conventionally, but the Dirty Dozen, you really want to make sure you only buy organic. I've gotten to the point where I feel like you can tell when you go to the grocery store, because there's so much organic produce in most grocery stores now. It's exciting to me, but you can tell when we're sitting there close to each other, and you can tell by the disparity in the price difference whether it's the Clean 15 or the Dirty Dozen, because if it's significantly more expensive for the organic, then it's probably because the thing was on the Dirty Dozen.
Right, exactly.
You know, and so they're going to make you pay for it, but it's worth it. You will see a difference. I believe everybody that I know that I was talked to has said, "Oh, I saw a difference in my child." Sometimes it's a difference after 3 weeks, and sometimes it's 6 months, and so for some people it's a difference within a shorter period of time. But when we went largely organic, I felt a difference in focus from myself and I saw it in my child. So
and it shows the extreme importance of nutrition, and we are what we eat, and also how individual it is that there's such a wide array of foods, thank goodness, and we like a lot of variety in our diet, and we want to get the least restrictive diet possible, but also stay away from, strong triggers, and those strong triggers may be fairly different from one child to another. And we also know that the gut heals over time, so with everything that you were doing with your son, he healed to the point where you added tomatoes back and found, hey, he could tolerate those now. So he gets all the benefit of those bioflavonoids and the good things in tomatoes without having to be too restrictive.
Absolutely. It can be such a tightrope. So last thing I want to ask you, because then I know you got things you got to go to, but what's the difference between Feingold and fail-safe? I don't know what fail-safe means.
I'd have to refer to Julie's book because I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not an expert. The fail-safe is not quite as restrictive as the Feingold, so in a way it's kind of a modified Feingold. So it includes more of the fresh fruits, whereas there's a fair limitation of fruits in the Feingold diet at first, when it's first initiated.
We should congratulate you on being an eco-safe person in your office. That you have
that my light goes off because I'm too still.
Your timer goes off if there isn't enough movement after much time, and we appreciate that because that helps everybody and that helps the environment. So we appreciate that. It's not the best thing for Skype interviews, but let's face it, in the realm of things, it's a much better thing for all of us.
One more thing I want to say, and I'm very supportive of this mother not wanting to put her child on prescription medications at a young age for ADHD. But surprisingly, and maybe we can talk about this at some later show, I do on occasion, as the children get older, when I know we've maximized the diet, I do consider some prescription medications later if the family wants to try it. But I always respect them when they want to try every avenue first. And and very young children, I'm slow to start prescription medication.
Absolutely. And you mentioned briefly, and I just want to drive the point home too, that hopefully this child is getting a good quality ABA program. Hopefully they've got 30 plus hours of ABA program, and that some of those attention issues can be dealt with through ABA. I think a lot of times, though, this is where we see that if you do the right things diet and nutrition-wise and you pair that together with ABA, that's when you're going to get the most bang for your buck. If you only do one, you're only getting half the equation.
That's right. And ABA, of course, is very powerful in shaping the brain and working directly on focus and what we call executive functions. So always optimize the ABA while you're optimizing their physical health.
And I don't know that did we talk about the omega-3 fatty acids? Because I know you mentioned that you wanted to be talking about that as well, but I can't remember. Did you?
Yes, we did. That I mentioned there are 2 studies now that showed a dose of 600 to 1,000 milligrams. So for this 4.5-year-old, you could start at 600 milligrams of supplementing with omega-3 fatty acids per day. 2 studies scientifically have now shown a modest benefit in calming hyperactivity.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Copeland, for being willing to be with us. We'll look forward to talking to you again in February.
Fantastic, Shannon. I look forward to it too.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So that was Dr. Linda Copeland. She is a developmental pediatrician and a board-certified behavior analyst. And as I said, every third Tuesday of the month, you can look forward to her in the second hour. I know that there were a lot of questions that were written in that we didn't get to. We keep them on file, and hopefully we'll get to some of them in February. Keep writing them in, though. Don't hesitate to write in a second time. That was, in fact, what this parent had done, is written in more than once. So that's slow and steady, and you get the attention. All right, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back to finish out the show. Stick with us. There's been another new study about optimal outcomes, and I wanted to know, what are your thoughts on recovery? Do you think it's possible? Do you believe in recovery from autism?
On recovery, you learn how to adapt. I mean, I've had a lot of experimental brain scans done, and they have found things that are definitely abnormal. I have an enlarged left ventricle that's definitely abnormal. That's not going to go away. That scan was done less than 5 years ago. But you work with someone and they adapt. You're not going to make me an algebra specialist. That's just not going to happen. But things like getting better at public speaking, that is something that I gradually learned. What I'm seeing today, especially with some of the kids on the mild end of the spectrum, I'm seeing teenagers that are much milder than me that haven't learned things like how to go up to the counter at McDonald's and order food all by themselves, how to go on the bus, how to shop, how to go in the store and shop, how to do a checkbook, basic things like that. Because what drives me crazy is when I go back to the cattle world and I see a guy in the maintenance shop that's running the whole maintenance shop at a big plant, and he's as Asperger's as he can be, and he's running a whole maintenance shop. And then I see Junior that's addicted to video games, and you can't get his duff off his chair and get him doing things. Now, when I was in high school, I did a lot of thinking about this. I got kicked out of a large girls' school for throwing a book, and I went to a special boarding school up on a farm, and I was allowed to work with the farm animals. And they let me goof off and not study. But I got to thinking, there's one thing they did not let me do. I goofed off and I didn't study, but I had to physically go to class. When I didn't want to go to the Friday night movie, they made me the projectionist. One thing they were not going to let me do is sit in my room, become a recluse in my room. They were not going to allow that.
I want to know why you threw the book. Why did you throw it?
Oh, I threw a book at a girl because she called me a retard.
Oh, good reason.
Oh, no,
to throw
she
it out.
teased me. And I had some problems getting in fights when kids teased me. But it was always brought about by someone picking on me. And the principal had me kicked out of school, out of a large girls' school for doing that.
And what'd your mom say?
Well, she was not very happy about the whole thing because when the principal called, I answered the phone and he said I was incorrigible and I was kicked out of school. Mother was really angry that he just said that right directly to me, which was definitely not very appropriate.
Welcome back to Autism Live. So amazing anytime you get an opportunity to talk with Temple Grandin. And I need to get in a call to her and her mother, Eustacia Cutler, who's an amazing woman. And Eustacia has said that she will come back on the show. We had her on not too long ago, and she is just amazing. And of course, that's the space I go, what did your mom say? What did your mom say when the principal called? You know, I understand, having worked in a classroom, you know, there's certain behaviors you can allow and certain behaviors you can't allow, but I'm glad her mother supported her. And of course, once you know Eustacia Cutler, you know that there wasn't ever any possibility that that wasn't going to happen. I gleefully admit that I'm following in the snowshoe prints that Eustacia Cutler left, because that's who I'm following, and with great purpose. In any case, I wanted to take a second here at the end of the show. I promised at the start of the show, our topic this week is fighting for what you believe in. And I think sometimes the problem with fighting for what you believe in is that you don't know what you believe in sometimes. You don't know what to believe, and sometimes taking action is like, you know, you're standing on the cliff and deciding what to do. And I was in a conversation this morning that's very similar to a lot of conversations, and I'm behind in my phone calls. Many of you have written and said, I want to talk to you, or I have a question or whatever, and I'm behind in my phone calls because I have so many that I need to get to. So I ask your patience, but be persistent. Email me again and say, I'm waiting for a phone call from you, because the squeaky wheel gets the grease. You know how that works. But in any case, I was in a conversation this morning with a parent who was saying, you know, what can I do about X, Y, or Z? And I said, okay, I think the first phone call that you want to make is this. And the response that I got back was, well, here's why I don't think that's going to work. And I was able to write back and say, you might be right, but you might be wrong. And take this leap, make this phone call, find out this piece of information, because after that, where I branch you off to is completely dependent upon this question that you need to have answered. And I will tell you that a lot of times it comes down to funding, that the first thing that I want to know for you is, do you have funding or not? Because if you have funding, then I know where to send you, and I know how quickly you're going to start services and what I can tell you is on your plate. If you don't have funding for a quality ABA program, then we have to deal with that first. We have to figure out how are we going to get you funding, which is a much more arduous task. And I have to know that so that I can help you to get through the mental toll of that. And the questions are going to be much bigger about how bad do you want this and what are you willing to change. It's a much different equation, right? Whereas over 50% of you, it should be like 75% of you should have funding for quality ABA right now. So if we can find out which one is it to start with, then the decision tree goes in very distinct different directions. But I heard from the parent the fear of, I kind of don't want to do this because I'm afraid that I'm going to get told that I don't have funding. Believe me, I understand what that fear is, because there was a moment in time when they said to me, your child has autism, and I was like, oh no, we're really in deep doo-doo, and I don't know what we're going to do. And then somebody said to me, don't freak out, because there's this thing called ABA and it's really going to help you. And the first thing that came up in my mind was, whatever it costs, I can't afford it. And I've blown my entire life because there's something that can help my child and I can't help him. And I knew I couldn't afford it no matter how much it cost. But the very next thing that somebody said to me is, there are places that you can get funding for it. I didn't know if I qualified in that moment in time, and it was gut-wrenching finding out whether I did or I didn't. It doesn't solve all the problems when you find out that you have the funding, but it solves some of the biggest hurdles in the beginning. So, but what I was hearing was the parent coming up with excuses for, this is why I don't think I should ask, because this is why I don't think I do have it. And I was hearing fear. And I just want to say that it was very interesting to me because I do the same thing now. So I want all of you to know I get it completely, and it was one of those mirror moments where I had been on a phone call with a doctor just the other day who was saying, why don't you just do this? And I said, because I'm afraid of X and Y and Z. And they said, but you don't know that those things are going to happen. Why don't you just take the advice that we're giving you and see? And I was like, because if this happens and this happens and this happens and this happens. So it was this moment where I felt the resistance because of the fear from this parent, and I went, oh, look in the mirror, woman, you're doing the same thing. So I put that out to all of you and say, what is it you're afraid of right now? What no are you so afraid of getting that you're not even asking the question, and you're not taking the action and not willing to see? I think probably there's some aspect of all of our lives that we're doing that. And what are we closing ourselves off to by not at least investigating? What's the worst thing that can happen? For that parent, the worst thing that can happen is that she finds out that her worst fear that she's already living with, that she doesn't have funding for ABA, is the case. Okay, it's not game over. In fact, it's quite the opposite. As Lisa Ackerman says, it's game on. How are we going to get you funding? What are we going to have to do to get you funding? And that's going to get uncomfortable, but it's not impossible. And there are other things that you can do if you don't have the funding. But being in that limbo of I don't know and I'm afraid is the worst possible space. So I put that out to all of you. We need to get to the point where we fight for what we believe in. But before we can even fight for what we believe in, we have to figure out what's possible. We have to make sense of what our gut is saying. And we have to be willing to take some chances. We have to be willing to hear a no. We have to be willing to hear the worst possible news. The truth is that for a lot of us, in that moment that our kids got diagnosed, That felt like it was the worst thing that could happen. I think you'll find out along the way there are other worse things. I do think the worst thing is knowing that there's help that's out there for your child and not being able to access it. And the first step is finding out how high is the hurdle. If it's just having to deal with paperwork, it's a hurdle, but it's very surmountable. If it's that you got to find a funding source, it's a much bigger hurdle, but it is not insurmountable. So let's all face our fears today. Hold my hand while I face mine as well, and we'll get through this because we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to show up for ourselves. We have a responsibility to show up for our kids. You know what I say, si se puede, we can do this, but we do it together. Feel free to write in about your fears, what you're concerned about. Okay, all right, we've got 2 minutes left. I want to take a minute here to talk about what's happening tomorrow on the show. Tomorrow we have Dr. Doreen Grampichet with us. We have a segment that's called Ask Dr. Doreen. She will continue to ask your questions. You guys wrote in a bunch of stuff over the weekend. We're going to get through as many of those questions as we can, plus the questions that you write in tonight and tomorrow morning. Okay, don't hesitate also to write in more than once. Sometimes, honestly, that's what catches my attention, so don't hesitate to do that. Also, if you need to put a long question in, you can send it to my personal email, which is s.penrod@autism-live.com. That's for those really long ones. If you've got a short one, by all means, put it on the live feature because that's a little bit easier, but longer ones, feel free to email them to me. Then in the second hour, Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy is feeling better. She's not 100%, but hopefully she's going to be able to be here with us tomorrow. And our special guest tomorrow is Vince Redmond. He is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and we're taking on the question of recovery. What is it? When should we fight for it? Is there a time in which we say, that's not going to happen for my child, and do we shift our focus to something else? It's really controversial, and we're going to talk about it in a very kind and loving way, and probably, I'm getting the Kleenex ready. I feel that we're probably going to need that, and some of you will too. But I think it's important to talk about these things, to voice our feelings, to voice our fears, so that we can get into the progress. We're all the way out of time, and I do want to mention, though, also that we do have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox and Dr. Adele Nadowski on Thursday, so don't forget about that, and you can be sending questions in for them. I really want to thank both of our guests today. Wonderful, wonderful women. We look forward to having them back on the show. Thank you for being here. We'll see you tomorrow. Until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.